Hi guys, it's me, Kenneth, and I'm making free videos that teach quality engineering step by step so that you can build real skills in the industry without paying expensive courses. So welcome to chapter two. Let me fix my camera. So in chapter one, we covered the quality management and leadership, like strategy, the teams, the ethics, the customers, the suppliers. So now we go on to the level deeper in the actual mechanism that makes it real. So the quality system itself. So this chapter opens a frame like a quality system is a mechanism that behind the quality assurance and improvement function of any organizations. So it's a statement of commitment and how the achievements to be qualified. So the word system is doing the real work, and then it implies the elements, the attributes, the relationship between them. So not just a single tool or a single department. So first, we discussed the basic elements of quality system like planning, control, and improvement, and the four organizational functions, and where the quality applies, like for example, for marketing, for design, for purchasing, and process. And second, we will discuss the product life cycle model from ISO 9004 and how the quality system implements for its elements on every stage of it. And third is the planning in real depth, like the addressing the risks and opportunities, setting the quality objectives, planning for change, and planning for safety and product reliability. And fourth is the control and the improvement, which is the process control, the statistical techniques, the non-conforming units, the verification, the measurement systems, the corrective action, and the quality records. And finally, the design of the quality system itself and the Montgomery three core activities. So that makes the quality management actually work, like the planning, the assurance, and the control improvement. So let's start with the definition on the screen, because everything in this chapter builds on it. So a quality system is a enabling mechanism behind the quality assurance and improvement of any organizations. So it's a commitment to quality and it tells how the quality to be achieved. So the term system implies, like as I mentioned a while ago, is our elements, attributes, relationships. So it's not a one tool, but it's a coordinated whole. So the basic elements of call system are like planning, control, and improvement. And these three elements span the entire process, present regardless of the type of organization or industry implementing quality initiatives. So whether that's say for example, that's a hospital, a semiconductor fabrication, or a travel agency, the same three elements apply. So in plain terms, planning is about addressing risk and opportunities. So setting quality objectives and planning for change before the problems occur. Control is about ensuring conformance to requirements once things are running. So like processes, measurement systems, verification steps. And improvement is about corrective action, eliminating root causes, and making continuous progress rather than just maintaining the status quo. So we'll spend time unpacking all these three things later on, but it's worth remembering as we go. So these elements pertain to all functions in the organization, not just the quality system. So which bring us the four specific functions. So this topic walks through the four organizational function and how quality applies to it. So one is the quality in marketing. So marketing is an important source of information about the implied and stated needs of the customer, the actual field performance, and the degree of the customer satisfaction with the product. So that information helps identify the product relative to the expectations and initiates corrective measures. So as a result, the marketing function is required to define and document requirements for quality product, provide a formal statement of product requirements, and establish an information feedback system for monitoring field performance continuously. Two is the quality and specification and design. So once a customer needs are clearly identified, the design function translate those needs into the technical specification. Like formal plans should be prepared and documented for identifying critical stages of the design process. with a clear responsibility assigned for each. Design reviews happen at the end of the stage to identify problem areas and initiate corrective action. All necessary measures should ensure clear, definitive design requirement statements, and methods for evaluating conformance during production should be specified. Design verification and validation through the prototype testing or other techniques is required. And provision should be made for periodically reevaluating the design in light of the actual field performance data. So number three is the quality in purchasing. The standard requires that all purchasing activities be planned and controlled by documented procedures. Successful purchasing begins with a clear definitions of requirements and a close working relationships with vendors and subcontractors is required to facilitate and secure continuous quality improvements. And procedures must exist for evaluating vendor capability, and in some cases, the vendor is required to demonstrate their capability of meeting the design requirements. If incoming inspection is performed, the cost involved should be considered, and the vendor should be notified of the results. And four is the quality of processes. So this element stipulates the requirements of operating under controlled conditions. The operation of processes and the operating conditions themselves should be specified by the documented work instructions. The process capability studies are recommended to determine how effective a process actually is and to identify where the improvements are needed. So this will cover on the depth in chapter 6. So quality related activities start with identifying the customer needs and extend throughout the entire life cycle of the product. So this is depicted in chapters figure 2.1 from the book of the handbook and adopted the ANSI and ISO and ASQC Q0994 1994. So here are the 12 sequential stages. So this is the full cycle in order. So marketing and research, so which identifies what the customer really need. The product design and development. This is the translating those needs into real design. Process and planning and development. So it is figuring out how it will be actually be made, and purchasing the source materials and components, uh, production or provision of service. So the actual making or delivering and verification, confirming it meets requirements. Then continuing, um, packaging and storage, sales and distribution, getting the product to the customer, installation and commissioning, especially relevant for capital equipment or complex systems, technical assistance and servicing, supporting the customer after the sale, after sale support more broadly, and finally the disposition or recycling at the end of the product's useful life. The full cradle to grave view. So the procedures and work instructions followed with each of these functional areas to achieve the organization stated the quality objectives. So represent the elements of the quality system. So it is also worth emphasizing that the suitability and the effectiveness of the system as a whole is determined by the attributes of these individual elements and their relationship to each other. So not just how good any single stage is in isolation. So the top management must establish, document, and maintain such systems with overall objectives in mind. And in other words, a quality system must cover all the activities that affected the product or service quality from the very first customer conversation to the product's eventual disposal. For ISO 9004:2018, it organizes the quality management into a specific set of elements, and it's worth knowing that this list precisely is the current standard on framing. The elements are managing for sustained success for organization, strategy and policy, resource management, process management, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and review, and improvement, innovation, and learning. So these elements are described as critical for managing quality for the long-term success of an organization. So the phrase long-term echoes back to the material we covered from the chapter one about avoiding a short term. So a quick fix mentality toward quality a quick fix mentality toward quality is not really effective. So it's worth connecting the list back to the product life cycle we just walked through. Like a system elements closely correspond to the various phases in the traditional product life cycle. In other words, a quality system must cover all the activities that affect the product or service quality. The ISO 9004 elements are really the management level categories that organize and oversee all 12 of those life cycle stages. So in the next several slides, we're going to unpack the three activities that sit underneath all of this: the planning, the control, and improvement in real depth. So planning a quality system is critical to address risk and opportunities in an organization. And ISO 9000:2015 describes three main goals of planning for a quality system. First is the planning actions to address risk and opportunities. So this planning gives an assurance that the quality system can achieve its intended results, enhances desirable effects, prevents or reduces undesired effects, and achieves improvements. So we will unpack the risk later on the slides. And next is the planning to achieve quality objectives. So organizations should plan on how to achieve these objectives, so which be documented and be consistent with policy, measurable, relevant, monitored, communicated, and updated as needed. We're also taking account any applicable requirements. Third is the planning changes. Organizations should plan for when changes will be required to the quality system, considering the purpose of the changes and their potential consequences, the integrity of the quality system, the availability of resources, and how responsibilities will be allocated. So these three goals, the risk and opportunity, the objectives and change, together form a planning function of the quality system. So let's go deeper in the next few slides and start with the risk and the opportunity. So for the risk and opportunity in planning, so it gives a concrete list for both sides. Addressing the risk includes avoiding the risk entirely and taking the risk deliberately in order to pursue an opportunity. Eliminating the risk at its source, reducing the risk to an acceptable level, and sharing the risk with another party or simply accepting the risk as it is. So that's a complete menu. The accepting risk is a legitimate strategy, so not failure to manage it. Sometimes the cost of avoiding or eliminating a risk outweighs the risk itself. So full risk management detail can be covered in the chapter 7. So right now we're just going to lay out the foundation here. So on the opportunity side, planning for opportunities may include adapting new practices, launching new products, opening new markets, seeking new customers, building partnerships, and using technology. So it's also worth to mention that the risk and opportunity are treated as two sides of the same planning coin in ISO 9001:2015. So you're not just defending against the bad outcomes, you're also actively planning to capture good ones. So a mature quality system does not no, a mature quality system does both simultaneously rather than treating it as a risk management and growth strategy as separate. So there are unrelated activities. So let's expand more on the planning for quality objectives and specifically the human element behind them. Organizations should identify what will be done, what resources will be needed, who will be responsible, and when items will be completed, and how the results will be evaluated. So that's a five questions every quality objective should be answered before it's considered as complete. So, but objectives on paper don't accomplish without people executing them. Which is why the topic turns directly for training and motivation. Employee training, qualification, and motivation are the key factors in developing an organization's human resources and emphasizing awareness as well. So, documented procedures for identifying and providing trainings at all levels should be established and maintained, and periodic assessment for personal skills and capabilities should be considered. So, training is not a one-time onboarding event, it is an ongoing assessed process. On the motivation side, recognition of the proper job performance and the use of motivational programs are ways in which management can support quality improvement efforts. So this connects directly to the Maslow's hierarchy from our leadership previously, our this chapter one. So it speaks about to ego level needs and well-designed motivational program can be exactly the environment that allows a genuine motivation to develop rather than trying to force it from top to down. So let's close out the planning section with the change management and generally serious topic. This is the safety and legal liability. On the planning for change, on planning for change, as discussed in ISO 9001:2015, the organization should consider the purpose of the changes and their potential consequences, the integrity of the quality system, the availability of resources, and the allocation of responsibilities. So this is not a technical checklist. Changing a quality system without considering all four of these can, undermine the very system that change was meant to improve. Now for the safety and product liability, with the topic treats with a real weight. Procedures are needed for identifying the safety aspects of the products and processes. And these aspects are best identified and considered during the design phase of the product life cycle. Catching a safety issue at the design stage is dramatically cheaper and safer than catching it after the product has shipped. So here's the legal dimensions worth understanding. The rule of strict liability has created a need to plan for field failures and the legal implications. Strict liability, for context, generally means a manufacturer can be held responsible for a defective product's harm regardless of the fault or intent. So, which is exactly why proactive planning here matters so much. So, these procedures may include documenting prototype and product design evaluation, testing for safety, providing adequate operational instructions with warnings against the known hazards, and developing contingency plans for product recall. So this topic names three specific tools for assessing the kind of risk: failure modes and effect analysis, or FMEA, fault tree analysis, and hazard function analysis. So all three valuable tools are for assessing risk, and we'll cover that much in the technical detail for chapter 3. Now we moved from the planning into control. The element responsible for actually achieving conformance to design requirements is the control of processes. So it is a central element here, and the type and sensitivity of the control technique used depends on the quality characteristic involved, like the nature of the stability of the process and its potential capability. Control should be extend over the material and parts used, the tooling and any shop adds utilized and environment conditions. So it's usually a genuinely broad scope. A proper identification of materials from the time of receipt all the way through the product delivery and installation is required. Traceability has to persist across the entire journey, not just at the start. Statistical techniques for monitoring process variables are described as a crucial and extremely important element of the quality system. The specific analytical techniques used to measure, control, and improve quality throughout the product lifecycle include the design of experiments, estimation, test of significance, control charts, and sampling inspection, all of which get detailed treatment in the chapter 6. So among all of this, the control chart gets specifically signed out. It's one of the most useful techniques for understanding whether a process is statistical control and how it behaving with respect to the tolerance limits required by the process. So this ties back to the Walter Shewhart original invention that we covered from chapter 1. Like the same tool now placed formally within the border quality system as the primary mechanism for the monitoring control over time. So control charts are useful for studying a process over time and can be used for both variable and critical to quality measures. This topic is like it's given as an example, like the diameter of the arterial stent and attributes, like whether the stent contains a defect at all. The defect can be labeled as nonconformities, and documented procedures for dealing with nonconformity units should be established and maintained. So those procedures include specific steps for the identification, segregation, and review of nonconformities. The objective is to avoid unintended use of such units and the consequent dissatisfaction of internal customers. Segregation matters specifically so So a non-conforming unit doesn't accidentally get mixed back in the good product and shipped by mistake. A product verification addresses the materials and products at various stages of the process that will prevent the unnecessary cost of further purchasing units that are already non-conforming. So there's no point of investing more labor and materials into a parts that are already defective. A final product verification, meanwhile, is performed specifically to prevent shipping non-conforming units to customers. So the last line of defense before the product leaves the building. In addition to the process and its output being controlled, all measuring systems used in the development, production, and installation products should be themselves be controlled. A measuring instrument that's out of calibration can make a perfectly good process look a defective or worse. So let a defective process look fine. Documented procedures should be established and maintain the measuring process in the state of statistical control. The procedure includes the initial calibration against a reference standard, as well as the periodic recall of adjustment and recalibration. And this may be extended to all vendors too, not just internal equipment, since a vendor miscalibrated gauge is just as risky as as own. The post-production activities matter just as much as anything upstream. The procedures for product stages, delivery, and installation activities can prevent deterioration of the product quality, secure proper identification, and safeguard against improper installation. So it is a perfectly manufactured product can still, let's say for example, a perfect manufactured product can still fail the customer if it's damaged or storage or installed incorrectly. And finally, the quality system should allow for feedback of information regarding the field performance, customer satisfaction, and the initiation of the corrective actions. This close says the loop back to where we started. The marketing function job is of continuously monitoring field performance, and it sets up the next topic directly. This is what happens when the feedback reveals a problem that needs fixing. So a quality system should define the responsibility and the authority for the instituting corrective actions. So critically, this action should be planned only after the identifying of root causes problem. So not jumping straight to fix a problem. So understanding why the problem happened in the first place. Action to eliminate these causes may involve a variety of functions like design, purchasing, production, and quality control. Since a root cause analysis sits inside a single department, the objective should be the objective should be to prevent the recurrence of these causes and improve quality and corrective action itself. To require to monitor the effect of the actions and to ensure high quality of is actually obtained. So in other words, you don't just implement a fix and walk away. You check whether it worked. So quality records are records that indicate results of implementing the system and provide a objective means for evaluating its effectiveness, and organization is required to establish and maintain documented procedures for the identification, collection, storage, retrieval, and disposition of these records. The full cycle of record itself is not just a creation. So analysis of quality records can help identify trends, improvements, not just compliance. So in addition, record should be indicated authorized changes to the quality manual and any modification made in the procedures or work instructions. A document history of how the system itself has to be involved over time. So we will cover documentation systems later of the documentation of what system with the next topic. So we close this topic with how the quality Sorry, so we close this topic with how the quality system itself should be designed. The design of the quality system should be related to the strategic plan and core processes with an organization. Quality initiatives and plans should be part of the management system, not just a structure. So Montgomery in 2013 argues that the effective management of quality involves the successful execution of three activities. So, number one is quality planning. It's a strategic activity that involves identifying the needs of the customer. So, this activity relies on the combined efforts of management, employees, and customers. So, both internal and external, and determining how the needs of the customer will be actually achieved should be included in the quality plan. Quality assurance, next, is the set of activities associated with achieving and maintaining products or services that meet the needs of both the business and the customer. Documentation during this activity is described as the importance of successful quality efforts. So we cover documenting in detail in the documentation of the quality system section uh, for the next videos. And third is the quality control and improvement activities. So these are those used to ensure, improve, and maintain a level of quality appropriate for the organization. So these activities often describe a statistical method such as the statistical process, design of experiments, and acceptance sampling. So it will be discussed in chapter 6. Continuous, improvement methods such as, Six Sigma and three activities like planning, assurance, and control improvement. So it directly, maps back to the three basic elements that we opened from the, introduction video: the planning, control, and improvement. So it's not a coincidence that it is the same underlying structure. It is viewed at the system level and at once at the managerial activity. So let's bring this topic all together by five closing points. So first, a quality system is a planning, control, and improvement. It apply across every function in the organization, the marketing, the design, the purchasing, and process. So it's not something that we only inside, that it's not only like for quality department. So second is the quality activities must cover the full product life cycle from marketing and research all the way to disposition of recycling at the end of life. So a system only focuses on production and ignores everything before and after it. It is also a covering, where quality can actually be won or lost. Third is planning, means addressing both risk and opportunity. So it's easy to think a quality planning as purely defensive, preventing bad things. But for ISO 9001 2015, it treats pursuing opportunities like new markets or new technology as an equal legitimate part of the same planning process. So from incoming inspections through in-process verification to final product verification with properly calibrated measurement systems underpinning every one of these checks. And fifth, Montgomery tree activities is the quality planning, the quality assurance, and the quality control improvement. So it mirrors this exact same plan. It mirrors the exact, you know, three-part logic um, that show up at the management activity level because it really, is expressed on the work instructions that will be covered later on. So I hope you enjoy this video and I bring you value. So see you next topic. Bye bye.